Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode. My name is Avilio Silvera. I'm your host, and today we have a real treat because we have someone who is a speaker, an author, and a teacher, specifically an emotional architect. And I know that you're going to gain some incredible value and some terrific spiritual insights from our interview today. And that's with Deana L Morgan. Deana, thank you so much for being with me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. You know, Deana, it's get a chance to speak with a bunch of different authors and leaders, both in nonprofit world and for-profit worlds. And I have not come across someone that describes themselves as an emotional architect. Can you tell me a little bit of how are you an emotional architect, and how does that help the individuals that work with you?
Absolutely. Well, I know that was an interesting term, even when it came up for me, because I hadn't heard it either. But that's exactly what I do. I mean, there's so many people who are struggling to have clarity about who they are. They're searching for their identity. I think when they don't know who they are, they just kind of flounder. And a lot of times, what's hindering someone from figuring out who they are, it's in their mind. Emotions get in the way, thoughts get in the way, triggers get in the way, pain gets in the way, the past gets in the way. And so it's really difficult for them to discover who they are. So part of what I do is I step into someone's world with them, and I help break down thought and emotion so that they can see what's actually keeping them from moving forward where they're designed to go. And so at that point, once we're doing that and breaking all that down, I rebuild it and I architect it in such a way that someone can step in to their calling, their design, their greatness. And I love speaking into the greatness that I see in people. I mean, just give me 10 minutes with someone, and it's really fun because I'm looking constantly for the greatness in an individual. I was built that way from a very young age, so I love to look for it. And so I'm an emotional architect. I really want to see people walk and run actually in their design, and I love to help them get there.
You know, Deana, it's fascinating that you say that, of someone recognizing their purpose and all the different barriers that comes with that. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it is so difficult for someone to recognize the purpose that they were designed to do?
Oh, gosh. There's a lot of things that get in the way from someone discovering that. I think that we can look around and we see, there are a lot of people that are running in their calling and doing great things. And so I think comparison slips in, and we can start to compare someone else's world with what we see compared to ours. And then, again, all the wounds and the pains and the doubts and the insecurities, they pop up. And it just seems like I'd rather deal with what I can control than what I can't control. And so people just don't have the encouragement, and they don't have the ability to have a support system around them to step into believing in who they are. Oftentimes they don't even take the time to invest in themselves. But when they do, when they start seeking, when they start searching, there's answers to be found. So, yeah.
So you mentioned this is something that you just have a gifting and a calling to see the divine purpose of an individual and to help them overcome some of those things that are keeping them from living in their purpose. So what inspired you to begin focusing on helping and reaching others and utilizing these spiritual gifts for the benefit of others?
Oh, gosh. You know what? That's actually twofold. There is a beginning moment where something happened, and I was in a room full of 800 people, and an event broke down, and we don't have time to go into that incredible story now, but an event broke down, and I saw some things occur among the leaders that were there. And it was interesting that I was seeing something going on in the heart of one particular leader, and I saw the mental struggle that was going on within her that would create the judgment towards others, the ability to not create a safe place for someone else because she couldn't create a safe place for herself. And at that moment, something in me, it's like the Lord put something deep inside me that was a passion, a desire, a yearning to create that safe place for leaders to get, whole in these places where there's these big, empty, caverns of doubt and insecurity, to get whole so that those that they lead can walk in the benefit of their healing, of their own healing. Because it's always from the top down, right? It's everything flows from the top down. And then the other part of that was years ago so that was probably about 2 years later, I was literally moving through a season where I was like, Lord, I really want to know, why am I here out of all of history? You chose to put me in this part of the timeline, so why am I here? Because I don't want to waste it. And I was pressing in, asking the Lord for clarity of the vision for my life. He brought me very clearly to a moment where he showed me, Deana, in my house, your role is as a thoroughbred trainer. And the next thing I knew, I'm standing in this stall. He gives me this vision, and I'm standing in this stall with this 17-hand high thoroughbred, gorgeous thoroughbred, and I'm brushing down the thoroughbred, and I'm tending to the wounds on their legs, and he's asking me, you're here to feed them, you're here to clean out their stall, you're here to tend to their wounds, all while whispering to the greatness that is within them, because so many of my thoroughbreds feel like they're called to the pasture when I've called them to run a race. They have greatness in them. And so you're to call that greatness out. And I think it was really interesting because from that day forward, I knew that whether I was sitting one-on-one with an individual or I was in a small group, or I was standing on stage in front of thousands, and I've been in all three of those situations, that I knew that I was made to speak to the design of who they were. And oftentimes, which is what's so crazy, is that in order to get something moving inside of the heart of an individual, it all comes back to my natural gifting, which is an emotional architect, because the stall was the representation of that individual's mind, really. And I'll tell you what's so fun, because I remember when the Lord said, in the moment that he said, your role in my house is as a thoroughbred trainer, I immediately said, oh, you mean leaders? And he corrected me, and he said, no, all of my thoroughbreds are leaders and called to greatness. So what that meant to me was that every individual that I looked at, he wanted me to see that every single person, they lead someone, they are leaders, Deana, and I want you to speak to the greatness in all of them. And that was a powerful moment for me, because I just I naturally drew people to me, so I kept thinking they were just leaders. But no, he corrected that, and I thought it was a beautiful moment. So that's a two-part question. So you can see that I have a passion for both a leader being whole and who they are, because we're all leading someone, and it moves from the top down, but we're called to run a race. And boy, I love it when I've worked with people and I see them run in their greatness. So nothing is more rewarding than that. But
you mentioned it's really neat that each and every one of us has that divine purpose.
Yes.
And early in a conversation, when you're telling us about what being an emotional architect is, you mentioned this one key word, and I want to come back to it, that people have a lot of fears, environmental fears, societal fears of understanding what their purpose is, and how to even kind of wrap their mind around what does that look like in my relationships and my communication and my emotions and in what I do, like the actual, my actual vocation. So how does someone get past those fears? And do you think that it's fear in general that creates the biggest stumbling blocks to someone really fulfilling that divine purpose?
Absolutely. You know what? When I look at across the bow, and I see a bunch of individuals coming from different backgrounds, there is the political, there is the education, there is the religious system. There's a whole bunch of different dynamics that I can see in front of me when I'm looking at 1,000 individuals, say. But one of the things that I think is so intriguing is they all have programming. They've all been programmed to think a certain way based off the environments that they allow themselves to stay in. to be among. Because anytime I believe that we rise up and we start to step out into anything that we believe in, there's a system or there's a belief system that wants to pull us back in and says, no, I'm uncomfortable with you stepping out. Come back in here where it's familiar and you're not making me uncomfortable with you figuring out who you are. So I think it's really intriguing to see that programming can keep us from moving out into or being open to believing in ourselves, which is why it is so valuable to have a support system around you. It is so valuable when we invest in ourselves and who we carry around us. But, man, programming, it can, knowing that our system around us can create a mindset that can hinder us to where it's fixed instead of a growth mindset, which is moving forward. Sure. We're here for a reason. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We're here for a reason. And if we realize that out of all of history, just like that day when I was asking the Lord, if we realize that out of all of history, we've been placed in this timeline for a reason, man, that's exciting. What am I here to do? Because there's nothing more fulfilling than walking in, running that lane that you were called to run.
So what if we are already programmed a certain way? Is there hope? And
absolutely.
How can we reprogram things to be in line with that purpose?
Absolutely. Reprogram is a perfect word to kind of have out in front of you as you realize, hey, I've been programmed to think a certain way. My education programs me to think a certain way, so I don't ask another question because the education already taught me what to believe. Right. And I think that, and whether that's political, educational, or religion, from any religious background, it is to realize that that there's always opportunity for incorrect programming. Which means that if you're not moving forward, if you don't see life flowing out of you, that there is the place that is stagnant, then chances are your programming is incorrect. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, you are. I think it's just a matter of, as you're giving us that word picture of when you see people, you're seeing all the different things that have shaped and influenced them.
Exactly.
And in order to be on the line of understanding and running, and I love that visualization that you share, that it's not just walking through, but it's running. It's being able to put everything you can into it.
Yes.
That there is an opportunity when you're conscious of it that you can kind of change things. And,
absolutely.
And those fears, you can overcome those fears, which you identified as that major roadblock.
Absolutely. So let me say something to that, because so that reprogramming, if you can actually stop and look at if you can actually have someone step into a place with you and help you break down thought to see where the stumbling block is, because a lot of times we're just numb to it. We don't even know. We're just operating in our stories. We're just moving forward, but we're not getting any further down the road. Change isn't happening, and we're not feeling a release. That's a place where we're stuck in our stories. So there's a reason why that story is continuing in every place in our life. But it's really valuable to go, and I believe, and I have seen it over and over as I've worked with so many people at this point, that there's so much value in going backwards to go forwards. Because backwards is where an agreement was made with a belief system, unknowingly or knowingly. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that understanding that backwards is recognizing that agreement. And at that point, what can I do?
Oh, well, half the battle is awareness, right? Yeah. You don't know what you don't know until you see it and you know it and you go, oh, okay, wait a minute. I actually came into an agreement with something, and that agreement has set things into motion for me in my life, and it's actually hindering me. It's keeping things from me. That's the place where I love to work with someone, and I actually love opening that up and giving them the space to get the healing that they need and come into a new agreement, out of agreement with a lie is what I say, and in agreement with the truth. And it's one of my favorite places to operate, but that's what an emotional architect does, is they help you, in my opinion, I help you break down thought, emotions, and then we find out what's hindering you, and then we rebuild everything so that we can move forward with the truth truth of who you really are, and all the other good stuff that comes with it.
That's fantastic. Deana, how someone's listening and they're thinking, you are talking my language. I'm living in a place where, I may be unsure of my purpose. I'm asking myself, God, why did you put me on this earth in this part of time? And how do I even understand the agreements with lies that I made and begin to become in agreement with the truth? How can I reach out to and get more training or be able to work with you? Where do I go to get that information, and what opportunities do I have as a listener that wants to do something more to connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I have a website, which is DeanaLMorgan.com. So there's lots of goodies that are on my website, different things that would be a resource to someone for different areas that they're looking for specifically. They can find it it's not exhaustive. It's a resource, though, resources that I think are very, very, very beneficial. But also, I have a book that's coming out. And that book is called From the Symptoms to the Secret. And basically, it's taking someone who is getting triggered in certain places in their life, and they're just tired of being triggered. They have tried everything they can to deal with an emotion or a reaction to certain events in their world. They're tired of it, and they want to unravel it. They want to see what is going on. This book is a very simple approach. It takes very complex ideas, a lot of psychology, and it breaks it down and makes it simple enough for someone to use the guide that's in there. And it basically reparents someone's ability to see something inside of themselves so they can do something about it. I love this book. I mean, I'm so excited about this project. It's been a while in the making, but it's finally here, and I have so many people wanting to know about it, so I'm so excited about it. But those are two different ways.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Deana, for coming on the episode and sharing with us. And for those of you listening, I hope you really got some value and some insight and are asking yourself some really important questions to make some decisions to be in line and an opportunity to run in your divine purpose. And if you want to connect with Deana, that's DeanaLMorgan.com, DeanaLMorgan.com. And Deana, thank you again for sharing with us today. And I want to thank you for listening to the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.